trying to vet what we've heard, what's kind of like whispered down the lane, and then what you're able to talk about, because I know most people are deferring to the governor's office. They want the release to come from there. But what can you tell us about the plans that have been kicked around? What does it look like? What are we waiting on to make the announcement? What do we still need?
Well, I think, we had discussions over the weekend. The task force did. Obviously, the approval from Johnson & Johnson just came late last week. I think the final announcement, the determination by the FDA was made on Friday. We were awaiting some additional information from the federal government, the guidance from the federal government in terms of how that vaccine is best utilized, distributed. The task force met at 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon with the governor to review the various options that the task force had. I'm comfortable saying the task force certainly made a recommendation that we should utilize this unique opportunity with the 94,000 doses that we're receiving from Johnson & Johnson. And it's important, again, to point out that we're expecting to receive 94,000 this week immediately. And then there will be a period of time, hopefully not too long, 2 or 3 weeks, we're being told, where we will receive a very limited supply. This is nationally a very limited supply of Johnson & Johnson before that production really begins to ramp up. So it presents us with a near-term opportunity with those 94,000 doses to have a real high impact, I think, on our communities, on our families, educators, our school students, ensuring we're getting kids back in school, parents who have been home with their children are able to get back to work. I just think tremendous benefits. Obviously, getting more and more folks vaccinated also benefits our seniors. But we are also seeing, as we've discussed, the increase in Pfizer and Moderna. That's projected to increase. That is prioritized for folks in 1A. That is prioritized for our seniors. This program that the task force has recommended is separate to the 1A prioritization. So I think in terms to answer your question directly, what we're waiting for, task force will meet today, this afternoon, I think to give a final approval to the strategic plan. This is certainly part of the strategic plan. And I anticipate an announcement from the governor's office as soon as tomorrow.
What time is your meeting this afternoon?
We meet at 3 o'clock, I believe.
3 o'clock. Okay.
So it's either 2 to 3 or 3 to 4. I can't recall which.
The one thing that I keep coming back to is that ultimately the plan here is the way that I would, pitch it if I were in charge, would say that we want to reopen schools. But the numbers I have are somewhere between 200 and 250,000, I think, educators and educational staff members to make that happen statewide, excluding Philadelphia. 94,000 doses isn't going to get that done. So how does that roll out? What does a rollout look like? Have you had discussions about that?
We have. So as you look at those numbers, 250,000 is the estimated total universe, counting Philadelphia. Now, to your point, you back out Philadelphia because they are already those teachers are already classified as 1A and being vaccinated as part of their direct federal allocation. So you back those teachers out, you're down to 220,000. After backing out all of those educators that have already been vaccinated as qualifying under 1A, and then you back out the percentage that are likely to decline receiving the vaccine, the universe we think is closer to 150, 175,000. And then you have the 94,000, as we've mentioned, from Johnson & Johnson. So it certainly has a very significant impact. So there will be prioritization within that. The task force has discussed, and I'll certainly want to wait on the governor's office to make this announcement and to finalize the details. But the task force discussed a prioritization around folks that are already back at school working, as well as prioritizing pre-K childcare workers and those teaching elementary age students who have obviously the most significant challenges for them and their families having learning take place at home. So starting there and then being able to expand based on the need beyond that. So we have discussed how to prioritize within that universe, but the total universe likely to be part of this program is not as high as 200, 250,000.
So are you saying that this is a done deal? You're just trying to nail down some like last minute challenges or guidance? I mean, it sounds like it's pretty much going through.
I'm hesitant to say that only because I've been in this business long enough that things change. But certainly was the recommendation of the task force. Based on everything I'm hearing, I just had a conversation with the Secretary of Health earlier today. I believe we're set for an announcement from the governor's office tomorrow. Ultimately, it's his decision. It's a task force recommendation. But it appears to me that this is on track to be finalized in the next day or two and being announced as early as tomorrow.
Another critical component of this that I had kind of thought about was that by not using Johnson & Johnson in that general pool, you do avoid the challenges that come when we see those hiccups where you get a lot one week and then you get a lot less the next week.
Yes.
Did that play a role in this?
It was certainly a factor as to how we could best utilize that 94,000 that was coming in, recognizing that we were likely not to maintain that pace for a few weeks. So what would be the most high impact with 94,000 doses that were coming in this week? And so certainly from a scheduling perspective, getting a significant increase of doses scheduled and then seeing those numbers dramatically increase, I do think that would pose a challenge for our seniors and others in 1A. And again, it's important to note, Johnson & Johnson is ramping up production. We are going to see that 94,000 dose we're getting this week. That's certainly going to be exceeded when Johnson & Johnson comes back online. And then we have Pfizer, Moderna ramping up their production, the allocation we're receiving, and then Johnson & Johnson. I really do, and I understand the frustration that folks have, and those frustrations are legitimate. But I genuinely think that we are turning the page.
Ryan, what are you telling? Because I saw you seem like you were kind of responding to critics already on Twitter, or at least trying to get out in front of it. What are you going to tell, like the corrections officers or the senior living facilities that still feel like there are a significant amount of people who qualify who haven't gotten doses that could have benefited from a program that would have targeted maybe those two specific industries or other industries?
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly, everyone is a priority. All of these groups are priorities. It's a matter of with the doses that we have allocated, who is the most vulnerable, who is the most at risk, and where can we have the most significant impact on the community, specifically with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. By taking care of our schools, by getting folks back to work, by getting our teachers vaccinated, and then focusing all of our resources, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, and Pfizer, on the rest of 1A, all the other vulnerable populations, all of those that should be prioritized. I think we're going to, in the most efficient and effective manner, ensure that those folks are getting vaccinated in very short order.
Yeah, the last thing I had was, I guess you've had discussions about it, but can you tie the vaccination clinics or the vaccination of educators and educational staff to a return to full in-person learning? Could you tell District X, Y, or Z that, hey, if you take advantage of this program, we need to see you back in school by early April, which I think is a targeted goal?
I certainly have to tell you that's my expectation. I've communicated that to the governor, the Department of Education, that I think if in fact we are going to utilize these 94,000 doses, that there is a clear expectation that as an educator is vaccinated or as an educator has been offered the opportunity to receive a vaccination, that we fully reopen our schools and our kids are back in school learning in person. That has to be a priority. And so I've certainly have strongly urged that be directly linked to this program.
Yeah, it certainly seems like too, if you took care of the at-risk teachers or those educational staff members who are at higher risk, that could at least support a hybrid model, even if you can't get everybody in this round. So, well,
that's right. I think you have to look at obviously the total number of folks we've gotten vaccinated, that have been offered the vaccine, as well as we'll continue to have to look at what the infection rates are. And fortunately they're falling all over the Commonwealth, but we have to look at by region, by county, by district, what the infection rate is. And that has to be part of the equation as to whether it's 5 days in-person instruction or whether it's something short of that. But the goal has to be that we have students, we have teachers back in the classroom, and as quickly as possible, 5 days for in-person instruction. I think another point that needs to be emphasized with this, with some of the confusion that's been over our teachers being classified, will they be classified as 1A or not? This is, as we've said, a special allocation. Educators aren't being classified as 1A, aren't jumping in front of the line. And in fact, the vaccine is going to be distributed outside of the current provider network. So we're not going to have a situation where a senior is trying to get an appointment with their provider to receive vaccine, or someone is 1A. They're not going to be competing for time with a teacher, because this is a separate allocation, it's a separate program, and a separate distribution location.
Was the task force, the governor, a little frustrated that that information got out before, you know, I guess it could be finalized, because clearly you have that meeting today. So
I certainly think
I appreciate
that
asking these questions early, but I acknowledge that, you know, we're still putting the cart before the horse a little bit here.
yeah, it certainly wasn't helpful in the sense that information was getting out, and we were trying to catch up to what was accurate, what wasn't accurate, because you had a decision that was very much still in process, and you had planning that was still very much in process. So the task force had made a recommendation, but the Department of Health, the Department of Education, the governor's office, PEMA, others involved were still very much, and are still very much, in the planning process. And so it's obviously, it's important that when we do come forward with a new program such as this, that we're able to accurately and clearly communicate it, because confusion is not helpful, because this is obviously a highly charged, very emotional issue for folks who've been struggling, who've been trying. You've been doing features, you've been doing stories on this.
Oh, yeah.
That are struggling to get vaccine, and it's not helpful when information is out there that's just simply that's not accurate. So it was unfortunate it got out early. That's the reality, and so we now have a responsibility, I think, to very clearly communicate what this program is, what this program isn't, and how I believe it is going to benefit our communities, not just our educators, our students, the broader community, our economy as folks go back to work, and our seniors and folks who are in 1A.